I feel like when people ask what you do, it's because it's tied almost to your value, to your identity. And sometimes for me, it's just so weird to be like, I'm just a homemaker. Someone is always going to have an opinion on what you should be doing. And I realize no one's opinion really matters besides your own and your spouse's. Because this decision, leaving a career to stay home in this economy, is one of the most complicated, loaded, and emotional choices a mom and a family can make. If you're in the middle of this decision, or if you've already made it and you just need a community, this one is for you. So let's get into it. Welcome back to the Mom Department. I'm Deborah, and today I'm sharing my journey from being a working mom to becoming a stay-at-home mom. Before I became a stay-at-home mom, it's crazy to think that I had a whole real professional life before this. I've worked as an auditor at the state auditor's office. I've worked as an investigator at the attorney general's office in Massachusetts, where I used to live. I've been an analyst at a consulting firm. I would travel for work a lot. And it's crazy to say that I had an actual career, that I used to talk to adults all day long. All in, I was building my career. I was building someone I was proud of and proud to tell others what I did. And there's a version of me that I thought would be a career woman forever, that I'd just be climbing the corporate ladder. And it was just what I'd kind of grown up seeing. Everybody I know literally worked. All the mothers I know always had a job. They always worked. I don't think I knew any stay-at-home moms. Even my own mother, she worked while raising us. She worked multiple jobs while raising us. So like all I ever really saw was, you know, you're a mom and you also had a job outside of the home. That's pretty much all I ever knew. And I assumed that motherhood would just kind of fit into my life and fit with my work. And I'd seen other women do it, like my mom, and I thought I literally would just be doing that. So let me paint you a picture of what my day looked like when I was a working mom. You know, I had my first baby in 2019, and I had stopped traveling altogether after I'd had my baby. I traveled extensively while I was pregnant, and I kind of made that decision with my boss that I wasn't going to travel unless I really had to. And so my husband and I, we decided that we didn't really want to put any of our kids into daycare. So we both worked from home at that time. And so we thought it would just be best to work from home and have our kids with us. It's so crazy to think how I did that for like 5 years. But we would work from home, and my husband and I would start the day off by sitting at the kitchen table, and we'd look at our calendars for the day. And that's how we decided how we would have coverage for childcare. If my husband didn't have a meeting and he could work and the kids would be there, he would have the kids. And if I had a meeting, he would have them downstairs and I'd be in the office running my meeting or whatever I was doing. If he had a meeting, then I would take the kids. It was literally juggling the kids throughout the day. And we spent most of our day just passing the kids back and forth to each other in between meetings. And when we weren't in meetings, then we were working on the couch, on the floor, on the kitchen table with the kids around us. It's kind of nuts. But we would leave the house often to take walks around the neighborhood, to take the kids outside. We go to the playground. And once nap time came around, I remember this like clearly. We'd get the majority of our work done during nap time, which we called our quiet block out power hour. It would probably be like for like an hour, maybe 2 hours if we were lucky with the kids. Actually, I have a lot of these documented on my YouTube. If you go back in the archives, you will see these videos of me documenting me and my husband working while having our 2 toddlers with us, and what our days kind of look like. And once evening came around, that was considered the second shift. And by then I would be so tired and mentally depleted. I would just start running through what was in the fridge and pulling together things for dinner. And the second shift literally honestly felt like the worst time, because not only was I so tired from work switching my brain constantly between work and being a mom, work and being a mom, work and being a mom. And then on like taking care of our house on top of that, cleaning up messes throughout the day, running back and forth. It was just a lot. And by dinner time, and like we'd have to get dinner time quickly done, we'd get bath time quickly done. And we'd compress that all into a few hours, and then we'd collapse on the bed and then do it again the next day. It was nuts. And you would think that come weekends, it would be our rest days, but we didn't really have those either. You know, those were just catch up days. We would do laundry, we would do groceries, Costco, and all of that quality time that we didn't have during the week just crammed into 2 days. And I was just so exhausted all the time. And I would tell my husband that I can't go on like this. Like, we need to figure out a different solution. I was the example of what it was like to be the woman who did it all. Like, I was a working mom. I was also kind of a quasi stay-at-home mom because my kids were at home and I was also at home, but I was working and we were able to do it. We had our kids. And not to say that we weren't able to do it. I mean, because we did it for 5 years, but it's a lot when you're doing this constantly day in and day out, and on top of that with no help. But we did this perfectly with our first two kids. But after my third baby, I literally could feel the stuff building up. Like, I was starting to feel more overwhelmed. And I remember I came off of my maternity leave, and my job had instituted a new return to work program for new parents. They didn't have this for the first 2 times I had gone on maternity leave. And it's crazy because I'd have my kids back to back to back. And so they're all really close in age. So I was going on maternity leave quite a bit. Luckily, I had such a great employer. But they introduced this new return to work, like it's a gradual return to work. So for 30 days, every week you just work 20 hours per week, and they would just pay you for the full 40. So it was pretty sweet deal. So I remember it was great. You could choose your own schedule. So I would work from 9 to 12 every day for a few hours, and that would be my schedule. And so even though I was just working reduced hours, it literally felt like I still had a full workload. It was kind of weird. Like, I was working part-time, but I had like a full workload that I would need to complete in like 40 hours. So I'd work a full day with my meetings, emails, deadlines while breastfeeding, and I was working. I never felt like I was accomplishing anything. And it was so hard to retain any type of information because mom brain is real. And I was in the constant state of like just postpartum and then sleep deprivation. And I just felt like my performance was declining at work, and I wasn't finishing things on time, and I was just missing deadlines. And it just really wasn't representative of my work or me as a person, but it was just happening because obviously there was a lot going on. I had 3 kids at home, and I was postpartum. I'm working pretty much full time, but like on reduced hours. So I was pretty much working after I put my kids to bed. So it was a lot. And it was just very hard to juggle 3 kids at home with a full-time job. And when I would work from home with 1 kid, it was easy. 2, manageable. 3, I literally just lost all balance. And so I was constantly feeling like I was just burning the candle at both ends. And I started to ask myself questions I really didn't want to ask, but I had to ask myself this, like, is this really sustainable? Is this the life that I actually really wanted to have? And I knew in my mind, no, instantly, no. And if I really had to pinpoint it, it was one day when I started to have a headache. And I remember this day as clear as day. And I'm a person that rarely gets headaches. And I think I was about, at this time, 6 months postpartum, I think. And my head was just rocking. It was literally pounding. And my husband mentioned off the cuff, he was just like, you should just go check your blood pressure. And I was like, why would I? Like, I never had issues with my blood pressure. And when I checked it, I was so shocked. The number was so high that I was on like ChatGPT asking like, what is normal blood pressure? And it was extremely high. And I remember checking it multiple times, and it just kept rising. And I made the decision to just end up going to the hospital just to get checked out. And obviously, luckily, I was okay, but the doctors told me that they really believed it was stress and it was stemming from stress and sleep deprivation. And in that moment, I pretty much knew. I pretty much knew. Like, I wasn't taking care of myself. I was not sleeping all that much, obviously, because I have a baby and I was postpartum. And I was just so burnt out. And I knew at that point that something really had to change. So I guess the biggest question is like, how did I actually make this decision and how did I actually make it work? How did I walk away from something that I built, or how do you walk away from something that you built? And I wish I could tell you there was an easy answer. There's clearly an easy answer for this, but there really isn't. And I'll kind of share how I got here and how obviously our family now is a one income household and how I am now a stay-at-home mom. So the idea of leaving kind of started many conversations. We always, like from the jump, like I already knew our family had always wanted me to be a stay-at-home mom and for me to like obviously leave the workforce. But financially, it was never like, we never were financially there to be able to do that. But we knew that that was always a goal that we wanted. It just kind of never felt like it was the right time. So I ended up telling my husband, like, on this date, I kind of just went to my calendar on my phone. I was like, on this date, I am going to quit my job no matter what. And honestly, it was just a random date that I chose and I had seen on my calendar. And I believe from that date when I said that, it was like a month and a half away, maybe 2 months away. And I was like, on this date, I'm leaving my job, babe. And he was kind of nervous. I'm sure he looked at me like I was crazy, but he was like, all right, cool. We're going to buckle down and try and make this happen. And actually started to think, this through, like how we were going to do this. And so there were some factors I kind of weighed. One of the biggest one was my kids' age. They're so little, they were so young. And in this season it's just so short. And doing this would obviously leaving the workforce would give me the opportunity to homeschool, which is something that we always wanted to do. And it would allow me to be able to focus on their education, just be able to focus on homeschool and not splitting my time between that and missing the goal of really just doing their homeschool. And then I also thought about my mental health. I was just running on empty and something was going to have to give, especially for my health. And honestly, another factor was just my gut. Something deep inside me was always pulling me towards leaving the workforce and just being at home. And I've always known that. But obviously, it's just being honest with yourself and being like, can I actually do this? Can we actually do this? So after that, my husband and I started to have real conversations about it, and they weren't easy, obviously. We talked about what this could mean for us financially. Could we actually do it on one income? What would we have to sacrifice? What would this mean for me, my identity, my independence, my sense of contribution to our family? And we didn't have all the answers, but we literally would just talk about this all the time. And we just eventually just decided that we were just going to try it. We're just going to do it on that date. And, honestly, I want to be honest about the financial piece of it all, because I do think that sometimes people just gloss over this and they're like, oh, yeah, just leave the workforce. But we honestly had to prepare, especially in this economy, because, times are rough right now and it's hard to find a job, even when you're qualified. So yeah, it was really hard. And the simple answer that I can honestly give about how we did it or how we decided to do it was we just decided to start cutting back. We went through all of our subscriptions. I know Netflix was one of them that didn't make it. So we are a family that doesn't have Netflix. And, we kind of got rid of the ones that really weren't essential. And we got rid of our cleaners at that time. We made a grocery budget and we stuck to it. We cut back on eating out and we just really had to prepare ourselves for the financial cut that was going to happen. And there's this weird thing that happens when you stop bringing in a paycheck. Even though you're working harder than ever, you can feel like you're not contributing. Like you have to ask for permission to spend money you used to earn yourself. And I think that's a big mindset shift that I'm still working through. I grew up being super independent. My mom drilled into me when I was growing up about never relying on anyone and especially never relying on a man. So, like, obviously, without a job, technically I'd be relying on a man. And so that messed with me a lot about leaving my job. But the truth is, I've learned this a lot and I've had to work through this. It's that I can rely on my man. Because the truth is, what I do at home has value. Even if it doesn't come with a direct deposit, what I do at home has value. I always have to remind myself that it's our money and it's not just his money, just because his job brings it in. Because honestly, he wouldn't be able to work if I wasn't taking care of our kids at home. He wouldn't be able to climb the corporate ladder if it wasn't for me being at home with our kids. So I have to really work with myself a lot every time I think that, oh, what I'm doing doesn't have value. Honestly, it's the biggest value because he wouldn't be able to do what he's doing. And obviously, without him being at work, I wouldn't be able to be at home with my children. All right, I want to shift to the part that people really kind of don't want to talk about or warn you about what will happen when you leave your job. And I'm going to talk, or when you kind of start pitching the idea that you want to be a stay-at-home mom. And I want to talk about the shame and judgment that comes with this choice, because this part actually hit a lot more than I thought it would. Sometimes it's really hard for me to tell people what I do. Have you ever been filling out something and it'll ask you what your occupation is? Or when people are like, well, what do you do for a living? And sometimes it's really, really hard for me to answer this nowadays because I feel like when people ask what you do, it's because it's tied almost to your value, to your identity. And I feel like your work is your kind of like your identity or what you're valued at in this society. And sometimes for me, it's just so weird to be like, I'm just a homemaker. And and sometimes I say that and people don't know what homemaker means. So I'm just like, okay, I'm a stay-at-home mom. That's what I do. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I stay home with my kids. I'm a homeschooler. But sometimes people just look confused, like they're trying to figure out why I would give up my career to stay at home and watch my kids or teach my kids. And sometimes I feel like they either look sorry for me, like I've been demoted, or some people hit me with the classic, oh, so what do you do all day? Or must be nice. It must be like a vacation. Like, and honestly, a lot of the times I just want to laugh because what don't I do as a stay-at-home mom or a homemaker? I'm literally a chef. I'm a maid, I'm a teacher, I'm a nurse, I'm a referee, I'm a personal assistant, I'm an emotional support human to a bunch of little people. I'm basically a micro manager at my home, and I do this all day, every day with no breaks. But somehow, because I'm not getting paid, it doesn't seem to count as real work. And honestly, I feel like I get this judgment a lot sometimes from even people I know. And especially the judgment came hard when it was from my own mom. I remember I had told her I was leaving my job and she was like, why would you do that? Why are you doing that? And I understand my mom comes from a different culture. And my mom she's just a very, very independent person. And I think that, my mom made it seem like I would just be staying at home. She didn't say that to my face, but the way she was talking made it seem like I was just going to be at home and be lazy. It was almost wrong for me to choose to stay at home with my kids while my husband worked. And, I know my mom means well. She loves me and I know she means well, but I think she just felt like I was just losing my independence and I was going to lose myself and just be lazy at home on the couch watching my kids. And I feel like she also thought I'd just be relying on my husband for everything if something were to go wrong. It sucked to receive that kind of judgment from my mom, but I also had to think that like no matter what I chose, whether it's to be at home or to work and be a working mom, I just realized that someone is always going to have an opinion on what you should be doing. And I realized no one's opinion really matters besides your own and your spouse's. And if you guys came up to that decision, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks because someone's always going to have an opinion. But I think honestly, the worst judgment really did come from inside of my own head a lot of the time. And I felt like I was going to lose my professional identity. I was going from being someone with a title, a role, and a purpose outside of my home to just being a mom. And I hate that I say that word or that phrase, just being a mom, like it's a small thing, but I'd catch myself feeling like I just needed to justify my existence or what I was doing at home with my kids. I felt like I had to always prove that I was being productive and that I still had value and that I was still worthy of just respect of being a stay-at-home mom. And I feel like I would go throughout my day and I would list everything I did day to day to my husband, not because he asked, honestly, but I think it's because I felt like I had to show that I was accomplishing something while he was at work making money for us. I felt like I had to say like, look, I'm doing all of this at home as well. So it's a great trade-off. Like we're equally yoked. And I think that's what I felt like I had to prove. And like I felt like I had to show that I was accomplishing something. And I think that's when I realized that's shame talking. And I'm learning to catch myself doing that. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I have to, like when a day that I know I need to rest, I'm like, oh, I need to do this, this, and this, and this, just to show that I'm being productive. And my husband will catch me. He'll be like, you don't need to do this. Why don't you just go rest? Rest. You don't need to load yourself. But I just feel like it's, that wiring that I'm learning to unwire from my head, that I have to show that I'm being productive all the time or what I'm doing at home isn't valuable. And that's something I'm learning to recognize and change and walk back. There are a few things that have helped. First is the mindset shift. I had to stop measuring my worth by my output, and I had to start measuring it by my presence. Like what I give my kids isn't a line item on a resume, but it matters. Me being there for my kids matter. Them having that memory of mom was home with us every day and was there to be with us, to teach us. And that's important to me. And I had to start measuring what my value was, which was presence, being able to manage our home, being able to be with my children, being able to educate my children. That is valuable. The second, what I also had to do was establish boundaries. I had to stop explaining myself to people who just don't get it. And all I had to say was, this is what works for our family, and realize that that's a complete sentence and I don't have to explain to anybody. Because honestly, it's nobody's business or what you and your family choose to do. Third, I started to find my people. I found other stay-at-home moms and who've also made this choice. And it's been great to talk to other mothers who understand the complexity. And I think you need people who see you and not people that you feel like you constantly have to defend or kind of puff yourself up around just because they're working and you're at home. I think what surprised me the most about being a stay-at-home mom has been how hard it is in a completely different way than it is being at work. When I was working, the hard external was just the deadlines, the logistics, and just being all tired all the time. But when you're at home, I think it's different. The hard is not external. The hard is dealing with the same day over and over again, like the monotony, like the loneliness, the losing yourself, and the endless repetition of just being a caregiver. it can be understimulating and overstimulating at the same time. I feel like nobody tells you that being a stay-at-home mom can be lonely even though you're never actually alone. Like you have humans around you 24/7, but you don't ever feel like you're alone. You know, the kids are always there, but the adult conversation is not there. Like the intellectual stimulation is gone and the feeling of a person outside of being a mom just kind of disappears at that point. And I think one of the biggest things that can change that obviously is finding a community of other maybe stay-at-home moms or people you can talk to. For me, that's me being on the phone with my sisters. We're talking throughout the day and it's kind of emotional, it's mentally stimulating me. People asking me other things other than food and snacks and talking about imaginary things, but it's great when you're able to plug into a community. So if you plug into a mom group that you guys can meet up with the kids, it really can help you not feel so lonely and like because you can kind of feel trapped inside of a home with a lot of kids. So like getting out and finding a community, getting out and doing things can really help with not feeling so isolated. Another thing is the emotional labor. The emotional labor is relentless. Like every meal, every mess, every load of laundry, every appointment, every emotional need, it literally falls directly on you. And there's no clocking out, there's no end of the day. You are literally on call 24/7. You're on. And the lack of external validation is real. Like there's no performance reviews, there's no promotions, there's nobody telling you you did a good job. Here, she's going to get some accolades or real recognition points. Like there's none of that at the end of the day. It's just literally another day. And you rinse and repeat it every single day. Obviously, like my husband says, like, babe, this dinner's great. Babe, wow, you did a really good job here. Like, obviously I get that from my husband, but there's nobody else externally saying that outside of, you know, your home. But here's the flip side. Here's what's better than I expected about being a stay-at-home mom. I'm able to be present with my kids, like actually present, not half there, half at work. I get to see the small moments. I'm not rushing through the day. I'm able to be there intentionally for my kids. And I think my relationship with my kids have deepened and I get to know them on a different level. I get to be with them. I get to educate them. I get to catch things I probably wouldn't have if they were at daycare or in school. And I think one of the biggest things is my stress. Although it is different, it's a lot more manageable and I'm not carrying literally just two full-time jobs in my head. And I think taking that extra space that was just already overloaded and just removing work out of it has just helped me tremendously. Like I'm able to actually show up for my kids. I'm actually able to show up for my husband. I'm actually able to show up in my home. And it's just changed the game for me mentally, like immensely. My relationship with my husband has shifted as well. We've had to discuss everything like the roles and responsibilities and expectations of, how this is all going to work while it used to be that like we would juggle the kids back and forth, but now it's shifted. Like he's in the office and he's working because he has to focus. And I'm downstairs with the kids. And obviously he helps out as he can because he is home. He'll help out with the kids when he can. He'll pitch in whenever he can. But kind of the roles have shifted where he's not responsible for the kids really during the day. It's my responsibility. Like I'm responsible for the kids. Like I'm taking them to appointments. I'm doing the play dates. I'm taking them out. I'm doing all of that. Plus, teaching them and he's working. And that's we've had to separate that. But I'm not going to paint the picture that, well, this is always smooth and this was a smooth transition. Like there are days that, I really do sometimes resent that he gets to work and I've had to heart check myself, but it does happen. I'm human and he gets to be alone in the office and I have to hear constant chatters and demands. And, there are days that he doesn't fully understand what I've dealt with by only 9 a.m. But, we're able to talk about it a lot more. And I tell him my needs. Like if it's a day that I need him to help out a lot more, he'll move his office downstairs and he'll be around and pitch in just to kind of alleviate the stress on me, which I've really come to learn that communication helps a lot. But I also want to talk about that this isn't a whole like stay at home mom, being a stay at home mom is magical type episode because it really is hard in different ways than what it was from when I was working. You know, some days I really do think about missing my old work life. And there are some days I wonder what life would be like if I never left, if I continued to climb that corporate ladder. But I think one of the biggest things that I think people should know is that just because you leave your job, it doesn't mean that you leave all of your ambitions or dreams. You know, that fire doesn't just disappear. I think that it does change direction of where you're going to outpour that creativity or that drive or ambition. And I have discussed this before, and I discussed it in my episode about chasing your dreams while you raise kids. Um, but I think it's connected to this story as well. Because leaving my career didn't mean that I was just giving up on my dreams. It just kind of means that I'm giving space for new ones to grow. I'm creating content. I'm building a platform. I'm pursuing something that matters to me. And it's on my own terms and in my own timing. And I honestly believe that for other moms too, when you get settled into your stride and of being a stay-at-home mom, you shouldn't just lose your hobbies or your passions or your dreams. Even if your biggest dream is being a stay-at-home mom, I think you should just make sure that you invest in hobbies outside of your kids, outside of your home, just to be able to feed into yourself. And so you don't just lose yourself in motherhood. I think being home actually enabled me to be able to create this space, to be able to build the mom department. And I think that this podcast and this community, it's something that I'm building for myself while I get to be home with my kids, which is such a blessing. And I think that when I was working full time, I had no margin or any creativity left. And I felt like I had no bandwidth to pursue anything beyond just surviving for that day. If you're thinking about becoming a stay-at-home mom, I think that it's not just a decision that you're making, it's a huge transition that you're actually doing. And I think transitions go better when you actually plan for them. So I'm going to walk you through some strategies that you can use to kind of help you when you're making this transition. First, I think you need to get clear on why you want to do this, not what society says you should do, not why Instagram thinks it looks like a cool thing to do. I think you should need to get clear on your why. And is it because you're burnt out and you need a break? Is it because you want to be more present during these early years with your kids? Is it because childcare costs just don't make sense anymore? Is it because something in your gut is telling you that this is the right decision for your family? What I would say is write down the whole list, because when the hard days come, and they will, honestly, they do, quite often, you need to remember why you made this choice. And this choice is going to be the biggest anchor for you during those tough days. The second thing I would say is you need to start having those hard conversations with your partner now, because this decision just isn't yours. It's going to affect your whole family, your whole household. You need to have the actual serious conversations. And I would start by being like, here's what it could actually look like if I were to leave the workforce. Sometimes it's even like if you have a practical husband, I know my husband's a lot like this, bringing out the numbers, what it would actually look like if your paycheck was removed, what childcare costs is versus what you're actually bringing in. Next is do the math. And you need to do the real math. I know finances aren't fun to talk about. It's not fun for me, but you really do have to do the math. Like, not, I think we can make it work math. You need to actually come with a real budget. Like, these are our numbers and this is what we can actually do. Second, you need to look at your expenses. Like, what's essential? What's a luxury? What can you cut if you have to? And then third, I would start building a little bit of a buffer. If you can, start saving for at least 3 to 6 months of expenses before you leave. That cushion gives you a little breathing room and takes the panic out of a big transition like this. I would say fourth, make a bare bones budget. Know what the absolute minimum is that your family needs to survive. And that way you can know what your floor is. I think putting those numbers together can really help you guys see, is this actually possible for you guys to do? Next, I would set a date and work backwards. Here's what worked for me. I picked a random date and I told my husband, on this date, no matter what, I'm going to be leaving my job. And I think having a date made it seem real. It gave me something to kind of work towards instead of just endlessly thinking, oh, someday this is going to happen. Someday this is going to happen. I knew on that date I was going to be gone. I think once you have your date though, and you work backwards, you can know what you need to do before then. You can know if you need to wrap up some projects, find health insurance, line up systems at home, and kind of get your affairs in order. I think the biggest thing is you need to give yourself a little bit of a runway for some people. And for some people that could be 2 months. And for some that's maybe 6 months to a year. But I think having a timeline kind of helps you build that dream and make it into a plan. And then I would say the fifth strategy, it would be to handle the logistics before you leave. Health insurance. If you're on your employer's health insurance, you're going to need to think about what your options are. Retirement contributions. If you've been contributing to a 401k, you need to know what's going to happen to that. If you're planning to homeschool like I am, start researching what that looks like in your state. The sixth strategy I would say is prepare yourself mentally. And this one is really, really important. You're going to need to prepare yourself for that identity shift. You're going to go from someone with a title, a role, and with external validation, with a paycheck, to someone whose work is kind of invisible, unpaid, and often thankless. And honestly, that's a big, big mental shift. So start thinking about it now. Who are you outside of your job? That's why I say it's really important to have hobbies. It's really important to have things for you that's outside of the home, whether it's working out or building a business, something outside of, or building a side hustle, like, I don't know, pottery, something that's outside of being a mom, being a caregiver, being a homemaker. I think can help you stay connected to yourself so you don't get lost in motherhood. Another thing that I would also say is find your community, find your people, because you want to kind of connect with other stay-at-home moms, because it can get really lonely. It can get really isolating when you're at home with just children all day long, especially if you don't have people to hang out with, people to connect with. So I would say start looking for a community now and build your support system for when you are at home with your kids. So those are the strategies and I think tips that can really help you if you're at that crossroads or the planning stages of going from a working mom to a stay-at-home mom. And I think that these are the practical stuff that I wish someone had walked me through when I was at that point, but I hope that this can be very helpful. If you're a mom and you're considering leaving your career to be a stay-at-home mom, there's no right answer and there's no better mom. There's only the mom who shows up and makes the hard decisions and loves her kids. Working doesn't make you less present. Staying at home doesn't make you less ambitious. We're all just doing our best with what we've got in this time that we have. So here's the truth. There's no universal right answer to this question. There's only one right answer for your family in this season, and that answer might change all the time. Give yourself permission to change with it. If this episode hit home for you, I want to hear from you. If you're a working mom, a stay-at-home mom, or something in between, let me know in the comments below. I want to hear from you guys. I want to know where you are in this season of your life. And if you know a mom who's wrestling with this decision right now, send her this episode. Sometimes we just need to know we're not alone in this decision right now. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.